Hello/x/back again to start another spooky thread because I will forever be sad at the state of /x/today. Ill start, I posted before but I rewrote it with more detail. This happened in January of 2020, I was 17 and in high school. My grandfather is a cattle farmer and a business owner, and he hired me to feed cows for him after school. Since I was in sports, I would leave the school and the ball field after practice, and my grandfather's properties were about 30 minutes out of town and around 20 minutes between each property, by the time I had gotten to what we will call the 80. It was around 7 to 8 at night and the midst of winter. It was dark and cold. The way the system worked is that I fill up buckets at the farm at his house and then drive to each farm with a designated amount of feed I needed to bring with me in order to feed the cows. And in the time I spent filling and putting up buckets, I had forgot to grab the key to the gate, and so when I arrived at the 80 I realized this, so I got out and started handing buckets over the fence and carried them 2 at a time to the feed troughs. While walking I was whistling Be Happy. Just the tune itself. Looking back with the knowledge I have now, whether or not the legends are true, it wasn't a good idea to identify myself like that out there in the woods. When I finished I walked back to the truck, and when I hopped the fence and was about to open the door when I heard a noise behind me, very quiet, but it was a quiet night and I heard it coming from the adjacent property. It sounded similar to the sound someone makes when having never learned to whistle, the air blowing and every once in a while getting a slight whistle through their lips. I listened for a while and thought that it was odd, but I couldn't really think about it much. I moved on and headed to the next farm to feed. Over the span of the coming 4 days in the week, I did the same thing every day. Besides forgetting the key, I came back and would feed the cows at the 80. I noticed that during the week the cows would not come to the troughs when called, so I would just fill up the troughs and move on because I didn't feel like trying to find them on the 80-acre property. Every time I would come back to the truck I would hear noises coming from the adjacent property, more whistling. Through the days I noticed that it was slowly progressing as it would when someone would try and learn whistling, until eventually on Thursday it was as loud as someone cattle whistling, the whistle you see in movies and in real life. The very loud whistle when someone puts 2 fingers in their mouth to project the sound. That night I went home and laid in bed, and I thought about the whistling phenomenon that was happening when I was doing my job. I noticed that it had progressed from Monday, and by Thursday it was loud enough to fully grab my attention, as if someone was trying to do that in general. And then I also noticed that it was in the tune of Be Happy, like how I had done on Monday. It unnerved me, but I didn't want to put more thought into it and chalked it up to a mockingbird or some other bird. Friday was the day that everything hit the fan, so to speak. When I arrived at the gate I had the keys with me. That day had been particularly hard and so I was frustrated to begin with, and when I was trying to get the correct key on the key ring I dropped the keys into some tall grass by the gate. I lost them in the dark and the grass, and so I grunted frustratedly and said damn it. After finding the keys I did my job and came back to the truck and was getting ready to leave when I heard a noise from the adjacent property. It sounded identical to a calf in distress, or being attacked by something. My grandfather would move new calves he bought or some from his properties to this adjacent property as well. I didn't want to investigate the sounds, but I felt that it was my job to do so. I grabbed my phone and I made my way down and across the road. I hopped the fence and started to hike upwards towards where the sound was coming from, and as I was making my way the noises made by the unknown thing slowly started to change. They went from sounding more cow-like to more of a guttural and scratcher-sounding noise. Groaning would best describe it. I slowed my pace due to this, but I didn't stop moving. Eventually I was about halfway to the top where the sounds were coming from, when the sounds changed again. Whatever was above me on the hill started to do what sounded like speaking. It sounded like someone who had never learned English or language for that matter, trying to sound out a word. It started to say the word damn it over and over, slowly sounding it out in the most guttural and raspy voice I had ever heard then and since then. It slowly said damn it in this way until it could say it fluently, and smoothly. Then the pitch and tone of the speech got lighter, saying damn it each time its voice got lighter and lighter. until it sounded very similar to me. At this point I was confused and a bit panicked, so in a flight, fight, or freeze moment I decided to confront this trespasser on my land. Thinking it was maybe a coked-up homeless man, I was willing to at least identify who this was. I scaled the rest of the way and came to the top of the hill. As I walked over onto the flat top, I started to yell, "Hey, this is private property," when I turned on my flashlight and saw this. Picture related. I recently drew this for my own sake, but what I saw was something I'd never seen before and have only heard since. It was crouched down in a squat with its back hunched, and when I turned on the flashlight its head turned from facing forward with its body, and faced me. Still squatting, it started at me and I got a pretty good look at it. Squatting, I estimate it was 5 feet tall, the face was elongated, the facial features were human, but they were contorted, longer than normal, and everything was stretched in a way that is hard to describe. Its skin had looked leathery and it was grayish white, it was stretched over its bones, and its stomach was sucked into its body and it had a deep rib cage. Its arms were very long and it looked like it had 2 sets of knees. Its hands and fingers were abnormally long, and ended in what looked like claws or protruding bones. While we were staring at each other we didn't move, and then slowly and without making a sound it stood without taking its eyes off me, and then turned its whole body towards me. The neck was long and swung with the body but the head didn't move. After this it towered over me. I'm 6'1" and it felt that this creature in front of me stood above me by 2 feet at least. I was only 10 yards from it and we stayed that way for only a moment, but my adrenaline was going off, and it felt like forever that I was being stared down by this thing. And that's when it moved its mouth. Its mouth was as long as its face width and went from what looked like cheek to cheek. It opened its mouth and said "damn it" back to me in my own voice. It mimicked me almost perfectly, the tone, inflection, pitch, everything was identical, but it felt wrong. Something was off, and it was enough to where that broke the staring contest and I turned and ran. I ran faster than I have ever ran before. I came down the hill and vaulted over the fence. Hopped in the truck and peeled out of there. I did come back after that for my job, and I did hear the whistling again. It's been years since that encounter and I still can't really tell what to make of it. It brought me into the world of paranormal research, and I've interviewed over the phone and in person many people, whether they be military personnel, business owners, or your average Joe. A lot of people have seen things like this or something similar. And it's something that racks my brain often. Thought/X/ Be me, around 9 to 11 years old. Staying over at friend's house overnight. Sister is staying over too because my friend has a sister that she's friends with. Play video until dark. My friend and I are sleeping in a little sheet metal shed on the fringe of their property while my sister and her friend are sleeping in the house. The property is filled with elephant grass that has paths cut out of it leading to different parts of the property. The grass is about 8 feet tall so you can't see shit. The shed is in one of these paths and you can't see anything but the path from the shed. Get in shed and play video with friend. Comfy AF. Around 1, Amici falls asleep. Continue playing video. Hear banging on the shed door. WTF. Say loudly who's there like an idiot. No response but more banging. Can't sleep because scared. Try to wake friend but he's a deep sleeper. More banging. Realize my sister and her friend must be pranking me. Gather courage and open the door. Look around, nothing. Even check around the sides. Scared even more now. Close door and try to go to sleep. Every 10 to 30 minutes more banging. Can't sleep because scared shitless. After a few hours it just stops. Finally snooze. Sister and her friend deny involvement. Rest of sleepover goes fine and we all go home. I only have one because I'm a city boy and this was several years ago when I was around 13, but I'm glad I caught this thread. Apologies in advance for the awful memory on some details. Great-grandpa had a farm, nothing too crazy. Small town in the countryside, where everyone knows each other. Great-grandpa is kind of famous for his chicken and eggs, despite him primarily growing veggies. Visit them once a year. That particular year he seemed kind of upset about something but wouldn't say what. Occasionally looked in one direction for a while before continuing his day. Don't know what he was growing, assumed he was just checking to see if it was ripe. Later that night, overhear him talking to my parents about something that bothered him in the fields. He was stumped as to what it could have been, just kept repeating it must be a devil. Few days later, Dad is helping him set up some traps and other stuff around the farm. Next day, Gramps is waking everybody up at 5 a.m. for breakfast as usual. Suddenly there is a loud scream, like a woman with a gravelly voice. He grabs his rifle and runs outside with his two big labs. A second scream happens, coming from over this hill where the stable was, assume north. Gramps is the only one who can use a gun, so we all just stand behind and watch him go towards the sound. A third scream, from the complete opposite direction, assume south. The dogs are barking in a different direction than both screams, where the house was, assume east. Gramps turns around and fires twice in the other direction, assume west. Shouts something about God, Mary, and being protected, then fires another shot or two, this time towards the south. Everyone is scared shitless. Several minutes of silence. Dad and Uncle run to where Grandpa was heading, north. I'm the only guy left at the house, so I run after them even though I'm 13. They're frantically looking around to see where the traps were and what was caught. They follow a trail and notice a few of the traps were missing entirely. They look around and realize they had basically gone in a circle and were back at where they started. They finally notice I've been tailing them and tell me to head back. Gramps whispers something to Dad and Uncle that I couldn't make out. Everyone tries to forget about it and say it was maybe an old coyote, even though we knew there were none around the area. Late at night, can't sleep, look outside the window. Gramps is sitting outside, probably waiting for it to come out. Decide to go ask him WTF that was. Before I can open the door I hear him say I shouldn't go outside. Turn around. He's sitting on the rocking chair inside facing the door, with his rifle next to him and a butcher knife by the table. Ask him when did he come in. Says he didn't step outside since dinner. When I tell him I saw him outside through the window, he gives me the most intense stare I've ever seen and loads his gun. Told me to go back to sleep and forget about it. Eventually I fell asleep somehow. At around 4 a.m. we wake up with gunshots and glass breaking. Dad and Uncle run out, but this time my mom holds me back so I won't go too. They're all screaming something at each other. Dad comes back in the room and says we can come out now. Gramps had heard the thing tap the window and shot it through the curtains. No body outside, but the curtains and front porch had what looked like blood on them. He'd run out to catch it, but it ran out of sight in seconds. Called a priest who didn't believe him but did the prayers anyway. We never went back to his farm again, even though he told us nothing had happened since that day and boasted about killing a demon.
Mosey on down to the Atomic Shaman Trading Post. We have t-shirts, decals, refrigerator magnets and other swag for sale. What better way to show your support for the show? Our merch can only be found on t.pub/link/Atomic Shaman Trading Post. Like, share and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to ring the notification bell. You can follow us on Twitter at Motel and RV Park. Catch the live streams on Rumble. Listen to text-to-speech stories on Atomic Shaman TTS on YouTube.